Welcome back to Cheating Stories Hub. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate each one of you. Before we dive into today's compelling story, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. Now, let's get into this tale of betrayal, cunning strategy, and ultimate triumph. The Blue Moon Tavern bustled with energy. The usual Friday night crowd swelled with co-workers and friends celebrating Ryan Cole's unexpected windfall. His $87 million lottery win had turned the modest bar into the center of the town's buzz, with Ryan at the heart of the excitement. "To the luckiest man alive," shouted Marcus, Ryan's childhood friend, raising his glass high. The group erupted into cheers, clinking their drinks together. Ryan, clad in his worn-out work boots and faded flannel shirt, grinned sheepishly. Despite his newfound wealth, he still looked every bit the hard-working foreman he had always been. "Luck had nothing to do with it," he chuckled, lifting his beer. "It's all thanks to my mom. She made me buy that ticket in her name because she said she had a feeling." "Your mom?" someone called from the crowd, their curiosity piqued. "Yup." Ryan took a swig of his beer. "Guess moms really do know best, huh?" Beside him, his wife, Elena, leaned in, her sleek designer purse and manicured nails starkly contrasting the bar's worn decor. She ran her fingers gently along his arm. "Baby, we need to start planning," she said, her voice laced with urgency. "I've already got a list." Ryan raised an eyebrow, his smile fading slightly. "A list of what?" "Everything we need," Elena cooed. "There's this beautiful house in Malibu I saw, and I've been eyeing a new car, something classy, like an Aston Martin." "Whoa there," Ryan said, laughing lightly. "First things first, we're taking care of Mom. She's getting her dream house right here in town. And you guys," he turned to his friends, lifting his glass again, "we're all heading to Europe. First class, all the way." Cheers erupted again, but Elena's bright smile flickered for just a moment before she recovered. "Of course, baby," she said sweetly. "Family first." The bar door creaked open, and in walked Nathan Price, a sharp-dressed man whose tailored suit and polished shoes screamed outsider. The room seemed to chill as the conversation slowed, the regulars warily eyeing him. Well, Nathan's voice rang out, smooth and calculated. "If it isn't the man of the hour." Marcus leaned closer to Ryan, muttering, "What's that snake doing here?" "Play nice," Ryan replied under his breath, though his jaw clenched slightly. "He's probably just here to congratulate me." Nathan wove through the crowd, his handshake firm but lingering as he clasped Ryan's hand. "Congratulations, Cole. Quite the story, the whole town's talking about it." "Thanks, Nathan." Ryan forced a polite smile. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Oh, I wouldn't miss the chance to celebrate a local success," Nathan replied, his eyes flicking briefly to Elena. "And what a success it is." Elena straightened under Nathan's gaze, brushing her hair behind her ear. "It certainly is. We've got big plans, don't we, honey?" Nathan reached into his jacket and produced a glossy business card. "Speaking of plans," he said, his voice oozing charm, "Price Investment specializes in exclusive opportunities for folks like you. If you're looking to make that money grow, give me a call." Before Ryan could respond, Marcus interjected, "He's got it covered, Price. No need to muddy the waters." Nathan's smile tightened, though his eyes glinted coldly. "Just trying to help. Wouldn't want to see such fortune squandered." He turned to leave but not before shooting Elena another lingering glance. "My offer stands. Elena knows where to find me." As the night wore on, the celebratory atmosphere was punctuated by whispered concerns among Ryan's friends. Marcus clapped a hand on Ryan's shoulder as they sat at the bar. "You need to watch that guy, man. He's not here to help anyone but himself." Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. "You guys worry too much. Elena and I are solid. Money changes people, Marcus said, his tone serious. And Nathan smells it like a shark smells blood. Ryan waved him off, his focus returning to his wife, who had retreated to a corner booth, glued to her phone. Her thumbs danced across the screen, her face occasionally lighting up with smiles that didn't quite match the moment. The night wound down with promises of future adventures, hugs, and heartfelt toasts. As Ryan helped Elena into their car, he missed the calculating look she cast at her phone. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, watching them drive off. "I've got a bad feeling about this," he muttered. 3 days after the celebration at the Blue Moon Tavern, Ryan stood in the living room of his modest suburban home. The floor was littered with paint swatches, renovation magazines, and blueprints. For 5 years, he and Elena had shared this space, and though it had its quirks, a creaky floor here, a leaky faucet there, it was home. Now, the lottery win opened endless possibilities. "What do you think about knocking down this wall?" Ryan called out to Elena, who lounged on the couch. Her eyes were fixed on her phone, the screen casting a soft glow across her face. "We could open up the whole space. Maybe add one of those kitchen islands you've always wanted." Elena barely looked up, her voice dismissive. "Whatever you think is best." Ryan frowned, setting the magazine down. "You've been glued to that phone all morning. Everything okay?" "Just browsing real estate listings," Elena replied quickly, her tone overly casual. "You know, getting ideas." "Ideas? I thought we agreed to stay here and fix this place up," Ryan said, his voice tinged with concern. "This is our home." Elena's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "Our home? This tiny box with peeling paint and a bathroom stuck in the 90s? Ryan, we have millions now. We should be living somewhere worthy of our status." "Status?" Ryan's voice hardened. "Money doesn't change who we are, Elena." "Maybe it should," she muttered under her breath, her gaze dropping back to her phone. Ryan's stomach churned. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, something he couldn't quite name. He picked up a renovation catalog, flipping through aimlessly before glancing at her again. "I need that receipt from the furniture store," he said suddenly. "The one you put in your purse yesterday." Elena waved a hand absently. "Check the kitchen drawer." "I already did. Mind if I grab it from your purse?" Her hand froze mid-scroll. "Sure," she said lightly, though a flicker of something crossed her face, alarm, maybe. Ryan moved to the entryway, where her designer purse sat on the bench. He reached inside, rifling through its contents, when her phone buzzed loudly on the couch. The preview flashed on the screen, catching his eye before he could look away. "Miss you already. Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again." For a moment, the world seemed to still. Ryan's fingers closed around the receipt, but his mind was elsewhere. Quietly, he returned to the living room, his face unreadable. "Find it?" Elena asked, her tone breezy. "No," Ryan replied softly. "But I found something else." He held up her phone. Elena's head jerked up, her carefully maintained composure faltering as she saw the message on the screen. Panic flickered across her face before she replaced it with indignation. "How dare you go through my private messages?" Ryan's voice was calm, eerily so. "Private messages? From Nathan Price? Can't wait to tell everyone about us once the divorce is final?" His words hung heavy in the air. Elena's mask slipped completely. She straightened, smoothing the fabric of her blouse, her voice icy. "Well, I suppose there's no point in pretending now. Yes, Nathan and I are together. We've been seeing each other for months." Ryan's grip on the phone tightened, but his expression remained neutral. "Months? So this isn't new?" "No, it isn't," Elena said bluntly, crossing her arms. Nathan understands what it means to have ambition. Vision. Things you'll never have. Ryan took a slow, deliberate breath. Vision? Elena, I've worked my whole life to build something real, for us. For you. For me, she snapped, her voice rising. You've spent years playing the role of the small-town hero, content with mediocrity. I deserve more than this pathetic life. Ryan's fists clenched at his sides, but he kept his voice level. Pathetic? That life put a roof over your head. Paid for your shopping trips. Kept food on our table. Spare me the martyr act, she hissed, grabbing her purse. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'll be filing for divorce, and I'll be taking half of everything, including the lottery money. Ryan's jaw tightened. The ticket was in my mom's name. Her face twisted in fury. That little loophole won't save you. I'm your wife, Ryan. I'm entitled to my share. He shook his head slowly, disappointment clouding his features. You were my wife, Elena. The moment you betrayed me, you gave up any claim to my life, or my money. You think you're untouchable, she spat, her voice trembling with rage. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Ryan's expression darkened, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Neither do you. Elena's eyes widened as she took a step back. She grabbed her keys from the counter and bolted for the door. You'll hear from my lawyer, she called over her shoulder as she slammed the door behind her. Ryan stood in the now silent house, the weight of her words pressing down on him. Slowly, he sat at the kitchen table, her phone still in his hand. He opened the messages between Elena and Nathan, scrolling through months of deceit. The betrayal was stark, undeniable. But as Ryan stared at the screen, his sadness began to harden into something else, resolve. He placed the phone on the table and pulled out the business card Nathan had slipped to Elena at the bar. Turning it over in his hand, a plan began to form. Nathan thought he could steal his life, his wife, his future. But Nathan Price had made one crucial mistake, underestimating Ryan Cole. The downtown office of Madison Kent, a seasoned family attorney, exuded quiet confidence. Behind her expansive mahogany desk, Madison adjusted her reading glasses as she reviewed the stack of documents spread before her. Across the desk sat Ryan, his face composed but his eyes hard with determination. Your wife's lawyers have been aggressive, Madison said, her tone crisp. They're pushing for an immediate settlement, claiming she's entitled to half of the lottery winnings, alimony, and a significant portion of your assets. Ryan leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. They can claim whatever they want. But they're missing a critical piece of information. Madison raised an eyebrow. And what would that be? Ryan reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved the original lottery ticket, placing it on the desk with deliberate care. This ticket was purchased in my mother's name. I have surveillance footage from the convenience store showing me buying it and explicitly stating it was for her. The money legally belongs to her. A slow smile spread across Madison's face. That changes things. Under state law, lottery winnings are the sole property of the individual named on the ticket. If the ticket belongs to your mother, your wife has no claim to the money. Ryan nodded. But there's more. He unlocked his phone and placed it beside the ticket. I have months' worth of messages between Elena and Nathan Price. Pictures, hotel receipts, and even explicit conversations about their affair. Madison's smile faded, replaced by professional interest. Our state still allows fault-based divorce claims. Infidelity can be grounds for a favorable ruling, especially with this kind of evidence. How do you want to proceed? I want the divorce finalized as quickly as possible, Ryan said. Use the evidence to ensure Elena doesn't get a penny of my assets. As for the lottery winnings, let her keep thinking she has a shot at them, for now. Madison studied him carefully. You're planning something beyond the divorce. Ryan's jaw tightened, and he leaned forward. Let's just say I want to handle this my way. Legally. Madison nodded. My job is to represent your interests within the bounds of the law. If you want to proceed, I'll ensure everything is airtight. Underscore 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 underscore. A week later, Ryan and Elena sat on opposite sides of a tense courtroom. Elena wore a sleek black suit, her posture rigid, her confidence evident. Nathan sat in the gallery, his presence a silent statement of support. Ryan, meanwhile, appeared calm and collected, his gaze focused on the judge. Madison stood and addressed the court. Your Honor, we have evidence of Mrs. Cole's extramarital affair, which provides grounds for an at-fault divorce under state law. Additionally, we have documentation proving the lottery ticket was purchased in the name of Mr. Cole's mother, Mrs. Audrey Cole. Under state law, the lottery winnings are her sole property and not subject to division as marital assets. Elena's lawyer shot to his feet. Your Honor, my client's personal life is irrelevant. We are here to discuss the equitable division of assets, including the lottery winnings. The judge adjusted his glasses and turned to Madison. Do you have documentation supporting these claims? Madison's confidence didn't waver. Yes, Your Honor. She handed over a thick stack of documents, including text messages, receipts, and surveillance footage. On a screen in the courtroom, the evidence played, images of Elena and Nathan together, timestamps from months before the lottery win. The courtroom murmured as Elena's betrayal was laid bare. Her lawyer shuffled uncomfortably, flipping through his notes in vain. Given this evidence, Madison continued, her voice unwavering, we request an immediate divorce decree with no division of assets. Furthermore, as the lottery winnings belong to Mrs. Audrey Cole, they are not subject to marital division. Elena's face turned crimson as the judge examined the evidence. Finally, he cleared his throat. Based on the evidence presented, I find clear grounds for an at-fault divorce. The lottery winnings, being the sole property of Mrs. Audrey Cole, are not subject to division. Mrs. Cole's claims are dismissed. Elena shot to her feet, her voice shrill. This is ridiculous. We were married. I have rights. Ryan finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. You gave up those rights the moment you betrayed me. The judge banged his gavel, silencing the room. Order. This matter is decided. Next case. As the courtroom emptied, Nathan and Elena hurried toward the exit, their whispered argument echoing in the corridor. Ryan watched them go, his expression unreadable. Thank you, Madison, Ryan said as they stepped outside. You're welcome, but I get the feeling this isn't over, she replied. It's not, Ryan admitted, his tone measured. Can I count on your help for what's next? Madison raised an eyebrow. What's next? Ryan's gaze followed Elena and Nathan as they disappeared into the parking lot. Let's just say they think they've won the battle. But they don't realize the war hasn't even started. Madison hesitated for a moment before nodding. If it's within the law, I'm with you. That evening, Ryan met with his mother, Audrey, in her cozy home. The lottery winnings had already been transferred to secure accounts in her name, untouched by the court proceedings. Are you sure about this? Audrey asked, her voice filled with concern. You could move on, Ryan. Leave them to their own mess. Ryan smiled faintly, taking her hand. Mom, they didn't just betray me. They thought they could take everything I built and ruin it. I need to see this through, not just for me, but for everyone they've hurt. Audrey sighed but nodded. Just promise me one thing. Anything. Don't lose yourself in this. You're better than they are. Ryan's gaze hardened. I know, Mom. That's why I'll make sure every move I make is just as legal as it is devastating. With the divorce settled, Ryan began setting the stage for the next phase of his plan. Through discreet channels, he hired Leon Webb, a tech-savvy private investigator, to monitor Nathan's financial dealings and professional network. Ryan's resources allowed him to maneuver quietly, gathering every piece of information he needed. The first battle was over, but the war was just beginning. Nathan Price strode confidently into his sleek, glass-walled office at Price Investments, unaware that his empire was about to face its first tremor. The man prided himself on being untouchable, a master of manipulation. But Ryan Cole had spent weeks studying Nathan's every move, learning the intricacies of his business dealings, and now, it was time to act. Underscore 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 underscore. Back at Ryan's home, his trusted investigator, Leon Webb, sat across from him, a laptop open on the coffee table. Nathan's financials are a house of cards, Leon explained, scrolling through pages of spreadsheets. Over-leveraged properties, shady deals with offshore accounts, and partnerships with investors who'd bolt if they smelled trouble. Ryan leaned forward, his eyes locked on the screen. Let's make them smell it. Start with the Blue Crescent deal. I want them questioning every penny he's touched. Leon grinned. Consider it done. Anonymous tips, strategic leaks, by the time we're done, he'll be scrambling to plug holes he didn't even know existed. Ryan nodded. And Elena? Leon's grin faded. She's keeping her distance from Nathan for now, but I've got eyes on her. She's been dipping into what little savings she has left to keep up appearances. Good, Ryan said, his voice steady. Let her feel the pressure. It's time they both learn what happens when you underestimate me. Underscore 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 underscore. 2 days later, whispers began circulating among Nathan's investors. A leaked memo hinted at irregularities in the Blue Crescent deal, a multi-million-dollar development Nathan had promised would yield unprecedented returns. The accusations were vague but damning enough to trigger panic among his stakeholders. In his office, Nathan's phone buzzed incessantly. His assistant poked her head in, her face pale. Mr. Price, we've got 2 board members on line 1, a reporter from the Financial Ledger on line 2, and an investor threatening to pull out on line 3. Nathan clenched his jaw, snatching up the phone. Get me the reporter. As he launched into damage control, Ryan sat at his desk miles away, monitoring the fallout through Leon's live updates. The cracks were beginning to show, and Ryan wasn't about to let up. Meanwhile, Elena's life was unraveling in smaller but equally significant ways. Her credit cards, previously backed by Nathan's accounts, began to bounce. Her designer lifestyle, once propped up by deceit and manipulation, was crumbling. At a high-end boutique, Elena approached the cashier with a stack of clothes only to have her card declined. There must be a mistake, she said, forcing a smile. The cashier ran it again and shook her head. I'm sorry, ma'am. Do you have another form of payment? Embarrassed, Elena left the boutique empty-handed. Outside, she pulled out her phone and called Nathan. It went straight to voicemail. Call me back, she snapped into the phone. I don't know what's going on, but we need to talk. As she paced on the sidewalk, the realization began to sink in: Nathan wasn't answering because he was too busy dealing with his own crumbling world. For the first time, a flicker of fear crept into Elena's mind. She had hitched herself to someone she thought was invincible, only to discover he was as vulnerable as anyone else. That evening, Nathan arrived at his penthouse, his usual swagger replaced by agitation. Elena was waiting for him, her arms crossed. "What's going on?" she demanded. "My cards are being declined, and I can't reach you all day. Are you in trouble?" Nathan loosened his tie, slumping onto the couch. "It's just a few bumps in the road. Some investors got spooked over a deal. I'll handle it." "Spooked?" Elena's voice rose. "Nathan, everything I have is tied to you. If you're sinking, I need to know." Nathan scowled. "I said I'll handle it. Stop panicking." Elena threw her hands up in frustration. "I left everything for you, Nathan. Don't you dare pretend this doesn't affect me." "And I didn't ask you to," Nathan shot back. "If you're unhappy, there's the door." Elena froze, stunned by his callousness. In that moment, she realized how fragile her position truly was. She had traded a stable, if imperfect, life with Ryan for a man who saw her as nothing more than a convenience. Unbeknownst to either of them, Leon's surveillance team was listening to every word, capturing the unraveling of their partnership. The following week, the pressure on Nathan intensified. More anonymous tips reached the media, connecting him to questionable zoning permits and inflated valuations on several properties. Investors began pulling out, and his stock portfolio plummeted. Meanwhile, Ryan was busy buying up small but strategic shares in price investments through various shell corporations. Every dip in the company's value gave him more leverage, more control. Leon delivered the latest update over dinner at Ryan's place. The mayor's office is also distancing itself from him. Seems someone tipped them off about forged permits. Ryan smirked. "What about the Blue Crescent deal?" "Dead in the water," Leon replied. "Investors pulled out completely." "Perfect," Ryan said, setting his glass down. "Let's keep pushing. I want Nathan cornered." As Nathan's world collapsed, Ryan kept a careful eye on Elena. She had begun making desperate phone calls to old friends, many of whom refused to take her calls. Her attempts to restart her social climb were met with cold shoulders and closed doors. The woman who had once held her head high in designer heels now walked the streets of town in worn flats, her pride eroded. One evening, as Ryan stood by the window of his home, Leon joined him. "She's circling the drain, man. How far do you want to take this?" Ryan's gaze was steady. "Far enough that they both understand what it feels like to lose everything they built on lies. But not so far that I lose who I am." Leon nodded. "Understood." The first strike was complete. Nathan's empire was tottering, his confidence shaken, and Elena's carefully curated life was crumbling. But Ryan knew this was only the beginning. The real lesson was still to come, and he was ready to deliver it. The sleek, glass facade of Price Investments glittered in the morning sunlight, a symbol of Nathan Price's once untouchable empire. Inside, however, chaos reigned. The hum of productivity had been replaced with frantic whispers, the shuffling of resignation letters, and the hollow ring of unanswered phones. "What do you mean Jacob resigned?" Nathan's voice boomed through the executive floor as he glared at his assistant. He received a better offer," the assistant stammered, clutching a stack of folders to her chest. "Double his salary, plus benefits." Nathan's nostrils flared. "From who?" "A company called Northstone Enterprises," she replied hesitantly. Nathan's face darkened. "I've never heard of them." Across town, Ryan Cole sat in a modest office space he had rented under the banner of Northstone Enterprises. Beside him, Leon Webb smirked as he scrolled through a tablet. That's 3 of Nathan's top people now. Jacob, Laura, and Martin. All gone within a week. Ryan nodded, his expression calm but focused. Make sure they're well taken care of. I want them loyal. And check in with the rest of his senior staff. If they're on the fence, make them an offer they can't refuse. Leon chuckled. By the time we're done, Nathan's empire won't have anyone left to run it. Back at Price Investments, Nathan's frustration only deepened. Get Jacob on the phone, he barked. We'll counter their offer. The assistant hesitated. Sir, they signed exclusive contracts with Northstone. They're legally bound. Nathan slammed his fist on his desk. Find out who's behind this Northstone operation. I want answers. His assistant scurried out, leaving Nathan alone with his thoughts. He loosened his tie and stared at the financial reports on his desk. Profits were plummeting, investors were fleeing, and his development projects were in shambles. At the same time, Elena was experiencing her own financial woes. Her credit cards, already maxed out, were now being declined outright. The luxurious apartment she shared with Nathan had become suffocating, as unpaid bills and collection notices piled up. She stormed into Nathan's office late one evening, her face flushed with anger. Do you know how embarrassing it was to have my card declined at lunch today? In front of my friends? Nathan barely glanced up from his desk. Not now, Elena. I'm dealing with a crisis. This is a crisis, Nathan, she snapped. You promised me stability, and now everything's falling apart. Nathan's patience snapped. He stood abruptly, towering over her. I don't have time for your whining. Do you think I wanted this? My investors are pulling out, my projects are failing, and now you're nagging me about lunch bills? Elena's eyes widened in shock. Nagging? Are you kidding me? I gave up everything for you. You gave up nothing, Nathan hissed. You left Ryan because you thought you'd be better off with me. Admit it. Elena recoiled, the weight of his words hitting harder than any insult. For the first time, she began to see cracks in Nathan's polished veneer, the same cracks Ryan had so carefully orchestrated. Ryan watched the unfolding chaos from his own office, where Leon provided a steady stream of updates. Nathan's investors are backing out faster than we anticipated, Leon said, sliding a report across the desk. The Blue Crescent deal is dead, and the Hamilton property? We closed on it this morning. Ryan allowed himself a small smile. And the Riverside project? Same story. It's ours now, Leon confirmed. Through separate shell companies, of course. Nathan doesn't know who's buying his failed ventures, but he's starting to panic. Ryan leaned back in his chair. Good. Let him. What about Elena? Leon hesitated. She's floundering. Credit cards maxed out, savings drained. I've got someone keeping an eye on her. Ryan's smile faded. Make sure she doesn't spiral too far. I want her to feel the pressure, but I don't want her to hit rock bottom. Not yet. Leon nodded. Understood. A week later, Nathan was summoned to an emergency board meeting. He entered the conference room to find grim-faced directors seated around the table, their gazes cold. Gentlemen, Nathan began, I know we've faced some challenges recently, but... One of the board members cut him off. Challenges? Nathan, the company's stock has lost 70% of its value in a month. Investors are demanding refunds. Projects are stalled, and now we're facing a possible SEC investigation into the Blue Crescent deal. Nathan stiffened. We'll recover. These are temporary setbacks. Setbacks caused by your poor decisions, another director said bluntly. The board is prepared to vote on your resignation, effective immediately. Nathan's jaw dropped. You can't be serious. We're beyond serious, the first director replied. You've become a liability, Nathan. We're hemorrhaging money because of you. Nathan's protests fell on deaf ears. The vote was swift and unanimous. By the end of the meeting, Nathan Price was no longer the CEO of Price Investments. That evening, Nathan returned to his penthouse, his world in shambles. He found Elena packing a suitcase in the bedroom. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice hollow. "I'm leaving," she said without looking at him. "I can't do this anymore." "Leaving for where?" he demanded. "You don't have any money. You don't have anywhere to go." "I'll figure something out," she snapped, zipping the suitcase closed. "Anything is better than staying here and watching you destroy everything." Nathan's shoulders slumped. "You're just going to walk away?" Elena paused at the door, her expression cold. "You walked away from me the moment things got hard. Goodbye, Nathan." As she disappeared down the hallway, Nathan sank into a chair, his head in his hands. For the first time, he realized just how thoroughly he'd been outplayed. Across town, Ryan received Leon's final update for the day. "Nathan's out as CEO," Leon reported. "The board cut him loose. Elena's gone, too." Ryan nodded, his gaze steady. "Perfect. Make sure we secure the rest of the properties and keep the pressure on his personal accounts." "You got it, boss." As Leon left, Ryan stared out the window, the city lights stretching into the distance. Nathan and Elena's perfect world had been shattered, and the pieces were falling exactly where he wanted them. But Ryan wasn't finished yet. The real lesson was still to come. Nathan Price's once pristine life now lay in tatters. His penthouse, once a symbol of his success, felt cold and empty without Elena's presence. The board of Price Investments had stripped him of his title, his personal accounts were under investigation, and his projects had fallen apart one by one. His phone, which once rang constantly with opportunities, now buzzed with demands from creditors and calls he no longer had the nerve to answer. Nathan poured himself a drink, the weight of his downfall pressing heavily on his shoulders. But just as the first sip touched his lips, a knock echoed from his door. Setting his glass down, he opened it to find two men in suits holding documents. "Mr. Price," one of them said, his tone curt. "We're from the Securities and Exchange Commission. We have some questions about discrepancies in your company's financial records." Nathan's heart sank as the men stepped inside, their presence marking the beginning of a new nightmare. Across town, Elena had settled into a small, nondescript apartment on the outskirts of the city. The designer clothes, lavish dinners, and high-end lifestyle she had once enjoyed felt like a distant memory. Now, she spent her days searching for jobs and her nights battling the loneliness of her new reality. One evening, she sat on her worn couch, scrolling through social media. The posts of her former friends flaunting their extravagant lives stung. She hesitated, then typed out a message to Ryan. "Ryan, I know I don't deserve it, but I need to talk to you. Please. Just once." She hit send and stared at the screen, waiting for a response that never came. Meanwhile, Ryan was reviewing reports with Leon. The steady dismantling of Nathan's empire had gone exactly as planned, and now the fallout was accelerating. "Nathan's facing an SEC investigation," Leon reported. "They're digging into everything: permits, kickbacks, offshore accounts. He's in deep." Ryan nodded. "And Elena?" "She's trying to keep her head above water. Reached out to you, by the way." Leon held up his phone with a smirk. "Want to hear her plea?" Ryan shook his head. "Let her sit with her choices. She's not my problem anymore." Leon leaned back, crossing his arms. "So, what's next? You've taken down his business, his reputation, and his relationship. Want to finish the job?" Ryan considered for a moment. "No. The seeds of their destruction are already planted. Let them destroy themselves. Focus on securing the properties we've acquired and reinvesting the money. Leon raised an eyebrow. Turning the page already? Ryan's gaze was steady. This was never just about revenge. It's about justice. They thought they could take everything from me and walk away. Now, they'll live with what they've done. In Nathan's penthouse, chaos reigned. The SEC investigators had uncovered damning evidence of fraud and mismanagement, and Nathan's creditors were circling like vultures. His assets were frozen, his accounts drained, and his name tarnished beyond repair. Late one night, Nathan sat in the darkened living room, nursing a glass of whiskey. The weight of his decisions bore down on him, but his self-pity was interrupted by a knock at the door. Opening it, he found Elena standing there, her face pale and tired. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice devoid of warmth. "I didn't know where else to go," she admitted, stepping inside. "I thought we could. I don't know, figure things out together." Nathan laughed bitterly. "Figure things out? Elena, we're both broke. I've got investigators crawling all over my life, and you've burned every bridge you've ever had. What exactly do you think we can figure out?" Tears welled in Elena's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "At least I'm trying to make amends." "Amends?" Nathan snapped, his voice rising. "You left Ryan for me because you thought I'd make you rich. And now that I can't, you're here out of desperation. Don't kid yourself." Their argument escalated, the bitterness between them boiling over into a shouting match. Through it all, the surveillance equipment Ryan had discreetly placed in Nathan's penthouse recorded every word, capturing the full extent of their fractured relationship. As Nathan and Elena spiraled further into despair, Ryan began to shift his focus. He met with Margaret, his lawyer, to discuss the next steps for reinvesting his mother's lottery winnings into legitimate, meaningful projects. "We've acquired 3 of Nathan's former properties," Margaret said, spreading documents across the table. "One is perfect for that community center you wanted to build." Ryan nodded, his expression softening. "Let's make it happen. I want it to be a place that gives people second chances, the kind of people Nathan and Elena would have stepped over." "And Nathan?" Margaret asked, raising an eyebrow. Ryan smiled faintly. "He's had his chance. Now it's time for him to learn what it's like to live with the consequences of his choices." In the weeks that followed, Nathan and Elena's lives continued to crumble. Nathan's assets were liquidated to pay off mounting debts, and his once glamorous lifestyle was reduced to living in a small, dingy apartment. Elena took a job as a waitress at a diner, struggling to adapt to a life she had once sneered at. Ryan, meanwhile, began to see the fruits of his efforts. The community center broke ground, providing job training, education programs, and resources for people who had been overlooked or written off. The properties he had acquired became part of a larger vision to rebuild the city, one project at a time. As Ryan stood at the construction site of the community center, watching the workers lay the foundation, he felt a rare sense of peace. The betrayal that had once consumed him was now just a memory, a lesson in resilience and the value of using power for good. The descent into chaos was complete. Nathan and Elena had fallen from grace, their worlds shattered by their own greed and deceit. But for Ryan, the fall was not the end, it was the beginning of something greater. The dingy apartment where Nathan Price now lived was a far cry from the gleaming penthouse he once called home. The walls were bare, the furniture mismatched, and the air carried the faint smell of mildew. He sat slumped on the worn couch, his laptop open on the coffee table, scrolling through job postings. Each rejection email he received was another blow to his fragile pride. Across town, Elena's life was no better. She had taken a job as a server at a local diner, where the tips were meager, and the hours were grueling. She spent her nights staring at the ceiling, haunted by memories of the life she had traded for her current reality. The friends she once flaunted were nowhere to be found. Calls went unanswered, and messages were ignored. While Nathan and Elena struggled, Ryan Cole's life was beginning to take a new shape. At the construction site of the community center, he stood with Leon Webb and Margaret Kent, reviewing blueprints. "The vocational training program will be the centerpiece," Ryan said, pointing to the main hall on the plans. "We'll focus on giving people real skills, construction, mechanics, things that can't be outsourced." Margaret nodded, jotting down notes. "We've already got interest from local businesses willing to hire graduates." "And the funding?" Ryan asked. "All set," Margaret replied. "The investments we've made from the properties you acquired have already doubled in value." Ryan's expression softened. "Good. Let's make this a place where people can rebuild their lives." Leon grinned. "From tearing down an empire to building one." "Not bad, boss." Ryan chuckled. "Not bad at all." Nathan, however, was still clinging to the illusion that he could regain control. One afternoon, he received a call from an old contact in real estate. "There's a potential deal," the voice on the other end said. "A small commercial property downtown. It's risky, but with the right investors, it could work." Nathan perked up. "I'm interested. Send me the details." As he hung up, a flicker of hope lit his eyes. But what Nathan didn't know was that the property in question was one of the few still owned by Ryan, purchased through a shell corporation. Leon, monitoring the situation from his office, turned to Ryan with a smirk. "He's biting the bait. Wants to invest in one of your properties." Ryan leaned back in his chair, considering. "Let him think he's got a shot. But make sure the terms are airtight. I want to see how far he'll go before realizing he's playing into my hands." Meanwhile, Elena's desperation led her to make a bold move. She arrived at Ryan's house unannounced, her eyes hollow and her once flawless appearance undone. "Ryan," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Please. I need to talk to you." Ryan stood in the doorway, his expression impassive. "What do you want, Elena?" She swallowed hard. "I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I need help. I made a mistake, and I've lost everything." Ryan's gaze was steady, but his tone carried no warmth. "You're right, you made a mistake. You betrayed me, Elena. You chose someone else, thinking he could give you a better life. Now you're here, not because you've changed, but because you have nowhere else to go." Tears welled in her eyes. "I was wrong. I see that now. Please, Ryan, just give me a chance to make it right." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Making it right isn't about coming back to me. It's about living with the consequences of your choices. That's your second chance, Elena." He closed the door gently, leaving her standing on the porch, her sobs muffled by the sound of the wind. Back at his office, Ryan and Leon reviewed the latest developments. "Word on the street is that Nathan's trying to rally a group of investors to back his new project," Leon said. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "And how's that working out for him?" "Not well," Leon replied. "The investors are hesitant, especially with the rumors we've been feeding them about his track record." Ryan smirked. "Good. Keep the pressure on. Let him think he has a shot, but make sure every move he makes only digs him deeper." As Nathan's attempted comeback unraveled, Elena found herself more isolated than ever. She spent her breaks at the diner scrolling through news about Ryan's community center. The articles painted him as a local hero, a man who had turned his pain into purpose. Each headline was a reminder of what she had lost, and what she could never reclaim. One day, as she wiped down tables, her manager approached her. "Elena, there's a customer asking for you." She turned to see a familiar face, Margaret Kent. The sight of Ryan's lawyer made her stomach drop. "Can I help you?" Elena asked hesitantly. Margaret handed her a sealed envelope. This is from Ryan. He wanted you to have it. Elena took the envelope with shaking hands, opening it to find a letter. The words were firm but not unkind. Elena. I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to make one thing clear, while I don't wish you harm, I also can't offer you the help you're seeking. You chose your path, and now you must walk it. That said, I hope you find a way to rebuild your life honestly. The choices you make now will define who you become. Ryan. Elena's hands trembled as she read the letter. Tears blurred her vision, but she folded it carefully and tucked it into her pocket. For the first time, she realized that Ryan's door was truly closed, and it was time to find her own way forward. Nathan's illusions of grandeur continued to crumble as every deal he attempted failed. Investors distanced themselves, his reputation remained tarnished, and his desperation became palpable. Meanwhile, Ryan's community projects flourished, drawing praise and support from every corner of the city. Nathan and Elena had built their lives on greed and deception, and now they were paying the price. Ryan, on the other hand, had rebuilt his life with purpose and integrity, proving that true power came not from revenge, but from transformation. Nathan Price's life had become a shadow of its former self. The SEC investigation had revealed extensive financial mismanagement, and the courts froze his remaining accounts, leaving him with little more than his dingy apartment and a growing stack of legal bills. Every call to potential investors ended in rejection, and his name became synonymous with failure in business circles. Late one evening, Nathan sat at his small kitchen table, staring at a bottle of whiskey. He had always been the man in control, the one calling the shots. Now, he was barely surviving. The humiliation was unbearable, but the bitterness was worse, directed not only at Ryan but also at himself for losing everything. Across town, Elena's descent continued in her humble apartment above the diner where she worked. The echoes of her old life haunted her, the designer clothes now boxed up for resale, the invitations to exclusive events that would never come again, and the friends who had vanished the moment her fortunes changed. After her shift one night, she sat on the edge of her bed, her phone glowing softly in her hand. She stared at Ryan's letter, which she had saved as a photo on her phone. The words, though gentle, were firm. She was responsible for rebuilding her life. For weeks, she had tried to ignore the message, but now it was the only thing keeping her from complete despair. Finally, she made a decision. The next morning, she applied for a second job at a local cleaning service. It was grueling work, but she didn't hesitate. For the first time, Elena began to take ownership of her situation, no matter how painful it was. While Nathan and Elena struggled, Ryan's community center flourished. The grand opening was attended by city officials, local businesses, and families eager to take advantage of the programs offered. The once abandoned property had been transformed into a hub of activity, offering job training, counseling, and childcare. As Ryan walked through the center, greeting attendees, Margaret approached him with a folder. "The final papers for the Foundation Scholarship Program," she said. "You'll be helping dozens of students this year." Ryan took the folder, his expression calm but satisfied. "Good. This is what it's all about." Margaret gave him a knowing look. "And Nathan? Elena? Still keeping tabs?" Ryan nodded slightly. "I know where they are, but I've made my point. They're living the consequences of their actions. I don't need to interfere anymore." Margaret smiled. It's rare to see someone walk away from revenge with their soul intact. Ryan looked out the window at the bustling activity of the center. It was never just about revenge. It was about building something better, for me, for this community. For Nathan, the realization of his rock-bottom moment came when he was evicted from his apartment. Standing on the curb with his few remaining belongings, he looked around at the strangers passing by, their indifferent stares cutting deeper than any insult. He spent the night at a cheap motel, the kind of place he would have once sneered at. Staring at the cracked ceiling, Nathan thought back to the decisions that had led him here. For the first time, he couldn't blame anyone else, not Ryan, not Elena, not even the investors who had abandoned him. He had built his empire on lies, and now it was gone. Elena, too, faced her reckoning. One afternoon, while scrubbing floors at her second job, she overheard her co-workers talking about Ryan's community center and its programs for people looking to rebuild their lives. "Wish I'd known about that place when I got out of prison," one woman said. "They really help people get back on their feet." Elena's heart ached at the thought. She knew Ryan had built the center not just as a monument to his resilience, but as a place where others could find the second chances she had squandered. Later that night, Elena sat down and wrote a letter, not to Ryan, but to herself. In it, she listed all the things she needed to change, from her attitude to her work ethic. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness or a promise to anyone but herself. For the first time, Elena began to feel a flicker of hope. As Nathan's and Elena's lives unraveled, Ryan's continued to flourish. His investments in community projects grew, creating opportunities for hundreds of people. The properties he had acquired from Nathan's collapse became thriving spaces, affordable housing, small business hubs, and green spaces for families. Leon approached Ryan one evening with an update. "Nathan's tried to reach out to some of his old contacts, but no one's taking his calls. Word on the street is he's looking for a job." Ryan sighed, his expression unreadable. "And Elena? She's working 2 jobs now. No trouble from her?" Ryan nodded. "Good. Let them figure it out." Leon tilted his head. "So, what's next for you?" Ryan looked out at the city skyline. "I've spent enough time looking back. It's time to focus on what's ahead." For Nathan and Elena, hitting rock bottom was both painful and necessary. Nathan's arrogance had been replaced with humility, though it came at a steep price. Elena's entitlement had dissolved, leaving her with a clearer sense of who she wanted to become. For Ryan, their suffering wasn't a source of satisfaction, it was simply the result of their choices. He had moved beyond the need for revenge, focusing instead on building a legacy of justice and opportunity. 5 years had passed since Ryan Cole's life was upended by betrayal. The scars left by Nathan and Elena's deceit were still there, faint reminders of a time when his world had crumbled. But now, those scars felt like part of a story he had outgrown, a story that had shaped him into the man he had become. The Tyler Community Center, named after his late father, had grown into a sprawling hub of activity. It offered vocational training, education programs, and counseling services to hundreds of people. The once empty lot was now a symbol of resilience and second chances. Ryan stood in the main hall of the center, watching as a group of graduates from the job training program received their certificates. Applause filled the room, and Ryan smiled as he shook hands with each graduate, congratulating them on their achievements. Margaret Kent approached him with a stack of papers. "The final numbers are in," she said. "This year, the center has helped over 1,000 people find jobs, housing, or educational opportunities." Ryan nodded, his expression calm but proud. "That's what it's all about." "And the scholarship program?" Margaret added. "We've got 75 students ready to start college next semester." "Make it 100, Ryan said. "And expand the mentorship program. I want these kids to have every chance to succeed." Margaret smiled. "You've built something incredible here, Ryan. I hope you realize that." Ryan's gaze shifted to the garden outside, where his mother, Audrey, tended to the flowers. "It wasn't just me," he said softly. "This is for everyone who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Nathan Price, once the city's most ambitious developer, now worked as a maintenance supervisor for a small construction company. His days were long, his tasks menial, but he had come to accept his new reality. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, replaced by a quiet humility. One afternoon, he sat in the break room with a few younger workers, sharing tips on how to handle difficult clients and tight deadlines. Though he had lost everything, Nathan found a strange sense of purpose in helping others avoid the mistakes he had made. Elena's transformation had been slower but no less significant. She still lived in the small apartment above the diner, but it was now meticulously clean and decorated with small touches of her personality, flowers on the windowsill, paintings she had found at thrift stores. She had worked her way up at the diner, becoming a manager, and had saved enough money to take a few night classes at the local college. One evening, she sat at her tiny kitchen table, filling out an application for a program in business administration. For the first time, her future felt like something she could shape with her own hands. Ryan's focus had shifted from dismantling Nathan and Elena's world to building his own. His investments had multiplied, allowing him to expand the community center, fund new scholarships, and create more affordable housing projects. Leon Webb, his trusted right-hand man, approached him one evening at the center. "Got a report on Nathan," Leon said, handing over a file. "He's been keeping his head down. No trouble." Ryan waved the file away. "I don't need it. Let him live his life." Leon nodded. "And Elena?" "She's not my concern anymore," Ryan replied. "They've made their choices. So have I." Detective Yvette Parks, now Captain Parks, occasionally drove past the community center during her patrols. She had once watched Ryan closely, wary of his calculated revenge. But over time, she had come to respect him, not just for the justice he had delivered, but for the way he had turned pain into purpose. One evening, she stopped by the center unannounced. Ryan was in his office, reviewing plans for a new wing of the building. "Captain Parks," he said, looking up with a faint smile. "To what do I owe the visit?" "Just wanted to see the place," she said, glancing around. "It's impressive, Ryan. What you've done here, it's more than I expected." Ryan leaned back in his chair. "I wasn't sure you'd ever stop watching me." She chuckled. "You gave me plenty of reasons to keep an eye on you. But you've proven you're not the man I thought you were." Ryan's smile deepened. "Thank you, Captain. That means more than you know." The story of Ryan Cole, Nathan Price, and Elena Carter was no longer front-page news. The city had moved on, and so had Ryan. The community center became a beacon of hope, its success a testament to the power of resilience and the value of second chances. Ryan stood on the rooftop of the center one evening, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. His mother's voice drifted up from the garden below, where she was showing a group of children how to plant flowers. The laughter and chatter filled the air with warmth. Margaret joined him, holding a glass of wine. 5 years, she said. "Hard to believe, isn't it?" "Feels like a lifetime ago," Ryan replied. "But I wouldn't change a thing. Not anymore." Margaret raised her glass. "To the future." Ryan clinked his glass against hers. "To building something better." In a small corner of the city, Nathan and Elena carried on with their lives, no longer bound by their greed and ambition. Their stories were quieter now, defined not by betrayal or revenge, but by the slow, steady climb toward redemption. And for Ryan, the game was over. Justice had been served, not with anger, but with purpose. His enemies had been defeated, but more importantly, he had won the greatest victory of all, a life rebuilt, a legacy secured, and a future filled with hope. As the sun set over the city, Ryan allowed himself a rare smile. The past was behind him, and for the first time in years, he felt truly free.